A city tried to become famous by releasing 1.5 million balloons.
Cleveland has now broken the Guinness Book of World Records and released...
Instead, it created one of the strangest disasters in modern history. At first, that sounds ridiculous. How could balloons possibly become a disaster? But in 1986, a single balloon launch would ground airplanes, cause traffic chaos, disrupt a desperate search and rescue mission, and turn a world record celebration into a public relations nightmare. And it all started with a charity fundraiser. In the mid-1980s, Cleveland was trying to reinvent itself. The city had spent years battling a rough reputation. Economic struggles, negative headlines, and endless jokes had made Cleveland an easy target for critics across the country. City leaders wanted to change that. They wanted a moment so big, so memorable, that people would stop talking about Cleveland's problems and start talking about its future. Then they found the perfect opportunity. The previous year, Disneyland had set a record for the largest simultaneous balloon release. Most cities would have been happy to beat the record. Cleveland wanted to shatter it. Working with the United Way charity organization, organizers announced an ambitious event called Balloonfest '86. Their goal was simple: release nearly 1.5 million helium balloons into the sky above downtown Cleveland.
The centerfold of Life magazine was this incredible photograph of 1 million balloons released for Disneyland. And it was magnificent. And the small hairs on the back of my neck rose when I saw that. And the seed of the idea was planted in my brain at that time. This would be awesome for young people to do.
If successful, the event would attract worldwide attention, raise money for charity, and place Cleveland firmly in the record books. Nobody imagined it would become famous for an entirely different reason. For 6 months, preparations took over the city. Organizers constructed a giant net stretching across an entire city block. Thousands of volunteers signed up to help. Schools participated. Businesses donated supplies.
We're reaching about 750,000 balloons right now. We're a little more than halfway. You guys are not only doing it, you're doing it in record time. It's unbelievable. Keep up the good work.
The excitement continued to grow. As the event approached, Balloonfest felt less like a fundraiser and more like a citywide celebration. Everything seemed to be falling perfectly into place. At least, that's how it looked. The night before the event, a powerful storm moved across Lake Erie. Shortly before the weather worsened, 2 local fishermen headed out onto the lake. They never returned. The next morning, worried family members reported them missing. When authorities located their abandoned boat, fears immediately grew that they had fallen into the water during the storm. The Coast Guard launched a search and rescue operation. At the time, these 2 stories seemed completely unrelated. One was a cheerful world record attempt. The other was a desperate search for 2 missing men. Within hours, they would become part of the same tragedy. September 27, 1986. The day had finally arrived. Downtown Cleveland was packed. More than 100,000 people gathered around Public Square. News crews prepared their cameras. Volunteers spent hours inflating balloons. By the afternoon, more than 1 million colorful balloons were packed tightly beneath the giant net. The sight was incredible. A massive rainbow cloud waiting to be released. Everything was ready. Then the weather started changing. Again, dark clouds began appearing on the horizon. Forecasters warned that another storm system was approaching.
I do want to remind everybody in part of Ohio, we continue with that severe thunderstorm watch until 1 a.m.
For organizers, this was a nightmare. The balloons were already inflated. The crowds were already there. Postponing the event would be nearly impossible. They had a choice to make: wait and risk losing everything, or launch immediately. They chose to launch. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. The net opened. Instantly, a wave of color exploded into the sky. More than 1.5 million balloons surged upward. The crowd erupted into cheers. People celebrated. Helicopters captured breathtaking footage from above. For a few moments, everything looked perfect. The crowd was cheering. The cameras were rolling. Cleveland had its world record, but hidden inside that spectacular victory was a problem nobody had anticipated. And within minutes, it would begin falling from the sky. The plan seemed simple. The balloons would rise high into the atmosphere, spread out, slowly lose helium, and eventually drift harmlessly back to Earth. Instead, nature intervened. The approaching storm brought cold air, rain, and shifting winds. Rather than continuing upward, huge clusters of balloons began descending while they were still fully inflated. Within minutes, thousands of balloons were falling back toward the ground. Then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. Suddenly, Cleveland found itself under attack from its own celebration. Roads became covered in balloons. Drivers struggled to see. Traffic accidents were reported. In some areas, roads had to be temporarily closed while crews worked to clear away the growing piles of balloons. But the problems didn't stop there. Strong winds carried enormous numbers of balloons toward Burke Lakefront Airport. Soon, balloons began descending near the runways. Airport officials had little choice. Flight operations were suspended until conditions became safe. What had started as a world record celebration was quickly becoming a citywide nightmare. But the worst consequences were still unfolding on Lake Erie. The Coast Guard was still searching for the missing fishermen. Every minute mattered. Then the balloons arrived, hundreds of thousands of them. The surface of Lake Erie became covered with floating balloons, making it far more difficult for rescuers to spot life jackets, debris, or any signs of the missing men. The search continued, but valuable time was slipping away. Imagine trying to find a single person in open water while surrounded by hundreds of thousands of brightly colored distractions. It was nearly impossible. 2 days later, authorities officially ended the rescue effort. Shortly afterward, both fishermen were found dead after their bodies washed ashore. The tragedy permanently linked Balloonfest to one of the most controversial rescue operations in Cleveland's history, and the fallout was far from over. Residents reported balloons covering yards, streets, rooftops, and neighborhoods.
The lake and caused concern on Saturday are no longer here today. No one's quite sure where they went, but at least they're no longer posing a threat to fish and wildlife, and they're not littering the lake.
It became famous. The event entered the Guinness Book of World Records as the largest mass balloon release ever conducted, but the achievement didn't age well. Not long afterward, Guinness retired the category entirely. There would be no future attempts, no new record holders, no rematches. The category effectively ended, alongside Balloonfest's reputation. Today, Balloonfest 86 isn't remembered as a world record celebration, it's remembered as a warning. A reminder that even the most exciting ideas can have consequences nobody sees coming. Because on that September afternoon, Cleveland wasn't trying to create a disaster. It was trying to create a moment of pride. Instead, 1.5 million balloons transformed a day of celebration into a lesson the city would never forget. And decades later, Balloonfest remains one of the strangest examples of how a seemingly harmless idea can go spectacularly wrong.